I have not said certain nationalities are rapists.
You have.
Are 20 times more likely to be convicted of sexual assault and rape in this country.
If you sometimes worry about the effects of your argument, because you can feel it in the room.
That is exactly the attitude that led to the cover-up of the rape gang scandal for 30 years.
Why do the people who claim to hate violence against women and girls so much advocate for policies that make women and girls in the UK much less safe? We're going to see that exposed in this debate between Matt Goodwin, pro-British, pro-border, and Zoe Gardner, open borders, globalist. Let's watch.
And I wonder, Matt, if you sometimes worry about the effects of your argument, because you can feel it in the room.
Okay, so can I take that point head on? Because
Please do.
the views that, let's say when Jonathan said, I support an open, liberal migration policy, let's say something equivalent to a continuation of the status quo, that's a 10 to 15% position in this country if you look at the national polling. The vast majority of people in this country want to dramatically reduce immigration. I would even go so far as to suggest that this, I would go, indeed, indeed. They're so desperate for change, they want to head over there. But the vast majority of people...
You're going home in a minute.
Want to lower migration considerably, and the polling this week suggests 85% would like it to be less than 100,000, roughly where it was when Tony Blair came to power in 1997. It was around 50,000. That's basically where the vast majority of people out there are. That's why Reform are winning the elections. That's why they're number one in the polls. That's why I would quietly suggest...
answer to my question.
It's coming back to that. That's why I'd quietly suggest questions like, aren't you worried about your arguments being used by these people? I want to flip that.
It's the particular arguments you're using.
Sorry, I know what you're saying.
You're saying
Sarah,
certain nationality are racist, are rapists, or...
No, I have not said certain nationalities are rapists.
You have.
I have said, if I could...
Have.
Well, okay.
This is why nobody trusts the expert class.
Can I just repeat to you exactly what I said?
Oh, God. Oh, God. Do we have to hear it again?
Please do. Please do.
That's not what Matt said, and he's about to correct the record in just a second. But I am saying that people from certain countries are more likely to be rapists. And stay to the end, because I'm going to give you the evidence and the reasons for that. And I don't care if you call me racist.
They mean yes.
What I said, I was very clear with my language. Eritreans and Afghans are 20 times more likely to be convicted of sexual assault and rape in this country. Now, I'm sorry if you find that uncomfortable, but that is based, than British nationals. That is based on freedom of information requests from police authorities. I'm sorry if you struggle with that.
So I want to
that is the evidence.
Okay, so let's take that.
To answer Sarah's question, which I'm being prevented from answering, I'm not the radical extreme person in this room. The extreme people are those who have been imposing mass uncontrolled immigration on this country.
Now let me go to Zoe on this and then I will come to the question. Zoe, there is a stat, and I'm going to trust your stats.
Oh, I have no idea.
And if you trust a stat, and you know, we can put it through Verify, we can do whatever.
Listen, it sounds
Can
terrifying.
we not say it? Is there a problem with saying it?
Her response is going to expose what many of the left-wingers who are teaching your kids in schools or working in the police or are politicians think. And it's exactly why your children are not safe when they are in their care.
I mean, who's silencing you? Who's imposing this on you? Once again, I'm being accused of pulling all sorts of strings that I promise you I have no access to. We're being told this by people who have a hell of a lot more power in society than I do. On that stat, I do take a lot of umbrage with Matt positioning himself as a defender of women, British women. Rape Crisis England and Wales has some myth-busting stats up on their website, and the one that strikes me every time is that 6 out of 7 rapes that take place in this country take place within the household and are perpetrated by somebody you know, probably somebody in your family. It's not something that I think is worth scoring cheap political points about, but I do worry that by positioning this story about migrants as rapists, we are actually making women and girls and children less safe by giving politicians a scapegoat to blame when really we need to address a very deep and dark and dangerous part of our society, which is sexual violence against women and how it really happens and what really goes on.
I just want to say one very quick thing. I'm going to say one very quick thing.
I bet you are.
The argument that talking about those statistics and evidence is scapegoating and is, let's say, xenophobic and provocative, that is exactly the attitude that led to the cover-up of the rape gang scandal for 30 years. That's why we ended up in that problem.
Anybody whose child is in the care of people who think the way that this woman does is genuinely unsafe. That child is unsafe because she's so blinded by her ideology that she only cares about violence against women when the perpetrator is a cisgendered, heterosexual British male, because that fits the narrative that everybody outside of that is oppressed, even when the data clearly proves that to be a lie. Not only are we going to see what the data says very quickly, we're also going to look at the reasons why, yes, people from certain cultures and religions are far more likely to, in fact, many of them don't even see violence against women as necessarily wrong. And we're going to look at that because we need to be able to say it and act. Now, according to the Ministry of Justice, it's just a fact that people from certain ethnicities are more likely to commit certain types of crime, okay? And far more likely to do it than people from the UK. And this should not be surprising. If you look when it comes to sexual crime, Afghanistan and Eritrea are at the top. Now, Afghanistan is a Muslim country. Eritrea has about 50% of Muslims in the country. And what does the Quran say about violence against women? Well, let's look at Quran chapter 4, verse 34. It says that to a man, if you fear arrogance from your wife, first you should advise them. Then, if they persist, forsake them in bed. And finally, strike them. Right? That's what you do if you think she's being arrogant. If you think she's being disobedient. That's the order of response. Okay? So it wouldn't be surprising that people who live in a country that reveres this book as a book from God would not have the same views of violence against women that you would have. It's also the fact that often they target white English girls for particular reasons. I mean, if you just look at some of the witness statements, or the victim statements, I should say, of the grooming gangs, and this article on Christian Concern highlights it, you'll see some of the things that they said. You know, one girl talked about how she was told that if you don't scream when you're raped, you're consenting to it. And that Muslim girls know this because it says it in the Quran and the Hadith, but this girl didn't know it. Then she, look, it's incredible. Then she tried to wear a headscarf to look like she was Muslim because they weren't targeting Muslim girls. You cannot remove the religious element from it. The hadith that she's even mentioned is, the hadiths are the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, or their Prophet Muhammad, who's a false prophet, of course. They're his sayings. And yeah, he says, look, a virgin, if she's asked, feels shy and keeps quiet, her silence means her consent. Now contrast this to what the Bible says. Because the UK, the reason we have the values we have, don't let them lie to you and say it's because of liberalism or because of secularism or feminism. No, because even if you think about a feminist world, the feminist world would say that men and women are equal in all ways. So that means that men don't have a responsibility to protect women, which is actually dangerous for women if that was the case, because men are much stronger than women. It's the Bible that says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. It's the Bible that says husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. You don't hit your own body. You know, it's the Bible that tells men, yes, even though you are stronger and could do a lot of damage, you have a responsibility to protect those who are weaker and those who are vulnerable. This is why in a country like the UK, we even think about violence against vulnerable people as a bad thing, against women and girls as a bad thing, and why in many other cultures they don't feel the same. This is why we see numbers like this. So for as long as you're going to have people like this woman who want to ignore the link between importing other cultures into our country and the increased danger that many women and girls are at because of it. We've not even talked about FGM. We've not even talked about honor killings. We've not even talked about any of these things. For as long as people like that want to ignore the glaringly obvious problems, our children will not be safe.